Hi, this is Vince LaMarca, Senior Clinical Research Director at the Applied Behavior Center for Autism. I'm excited to let everyone know that we're getting ready to present our first swim research poster at the National ABA Conference this coming May, and wanted to really give you an idea of what it is we've been working on over the past 6 months. We've tried to really focus on what we think are going to be three critical components of learning to swim for children with autism that aren't necessarily taken into consideration by programs that have already been developed at your local YMCA or within private swim lessons that you might get. And those three things you'll notice are very common common aspects of applied behavior analysis in general in other areas that have just important rollover into swimming as well. That's going to be the motivation to learn, the success in learning, and then the sequence of learning itself. Of course, when we talk about motivation to learn, we're talking about reinforcement here and doing a true preference assessment. What we've done is made sure in the beginning of each of the swim lessons, we take the first 5 minutes to do a preference assessment of what it is that's going to motivate the child to engage in the swimming behaviors that we want to engage in. One of our thoughts is that what happens a lot of times in your typical swim lessons is that in advance, a teacher or a swim instructor will have said, well, there's this game that I play when teaching a kid to swim, and so that's the game that I'm going to play. Or a lot of kids like it when I do this particular activity after we finish with the swim lessons. We're going to do this particular song or activity as part of the swim lesson. But we know children with autism sometimes have different interests, and what we want to find is those things that really and truly are going to motivate them to engage in the behaviors over and over again. So with our preference assessment, we're looking to find those actual reinforcers and then also make sure that they're being given on a frequent enough schedule that the schedule of reinforcement is correct to make sure that those behaviors in fact increase. That's the first area of research that we've been focused on. The second area is the idea of success. We want them to be successful the majority of the time, and so we've been using the flexible prompt fading that has been looked into a lot by Leaf and Associates to focus on a child being successful at least 80% of the time, given the prompting procedure that is chosen by the technician. So we have people who are working with the participant in the water who's familiar with the kinds of prompts that are going to be successful with them. And rather than hitting a specific prompt hierarchy that you have to do every single time, we've found, and what we're continuing to research, is that allowing the technicians enough flexibility to say, well, I just need to make sure that this child responds correctly 80% of the time, and that I'm focusing on feeding those prompts, that's enough to see the progress that we want to see in terms of their increase in swim skills, while allowing this flexibility that we want to hopefully have it happen as quickly as possible. We also accept approximations. There are certain things that are just harder to prompt, and so what we have to do is, while we may be with blowing bubbles is oftentimes one of the big ones, while we may want the child to move from blowing bubbles just below their lips to submerging their entire face or putting their face in the water, with a lot of children, there is going to have to be a gradual shaping process where we're even looking at, well, do they at least get the tip of their nose in and get a larger reinforcer at that point in time? And how is it that we also reinforce the attempts that we're making? So this idea of success, that the majority of the time, 80% or higher, that children are successful in what it is that we want them to do for swimming, has also been an important part of the research. And then finally, the sequence of learning is the third aspect that we're really following along closely with each of the children. What you'll find in most programs that are out there right now is that children are placed in different groups. It can be given different names, the levels they're in, or cute animal names or something. And to move from one group to the next group, there's a whole range of skills that you have to finish and complete. But what we're finding is that if you were to take all of those skills, or if you were to take all of the basic skills that we're focused on, some children will excel really quickly in something like kicking their legs, but be a lot slower with blowing bubbles and getting their face in the water. And it'll be the exact opposite with other kids who will dunk their face in the water, go into the water just fine, but it takes forever for them to learn to kick their feet for 30 seconds. And so what we're looking at is, rather than saying, well, rather than moving within a group of you have to finish this set of skills before we're going to start focusing on this next set, is really doing a more individualized approach of saying, how is it that we follow this pattern along of building on your success, And what we find is when we do that, a lot of times some of the things that are more difficult for a particular participant, it actually gets better on its own simply because of the way that it is gradually and incidentally included within the entire swimming context. So the kid who doesn't like to kick for 30 seconds at a time, well, the fact that we're working on their bubble skills and we're working on them floating on flotation devices, they're kicking their legs every once in a while. And it's gradually getting to a point where they're kicking more and more and more, so that when we go back to then focus on that 30 seconds of kicking, it's easier than if we had said at this particular point in time you have to do it. It's the exact opposite with a kid who has difficulty blowing bubbles. Maybe they're kicking a lot and the water's getting into their face more. They're getting more used to that around their face, so that then when we go back to, okay, we need to finish this skill up, it becomes easier because of the experience that they've had with kicking. So really making sure that we focus on individualized sequence of learning is another important aspect of our research. The overall experience has certainly been rewarding. We're excited to see where it's going to end with the poster that we do and then what the next steps will be. And we are certainly excited to continue to share our findings and our ideas along the way. So thank you very much.